of our lives. So you may not recognize this, but this is what the internet looked like back in 1980. It was called ARPANET. ARPA stood for Advanced Research Projects Agency, and then network. The first computers were connected to the ARPANET all the way back in 1969. And through the early 1980s, really the only organizations that were connected to ARPANET were government agencies, government contractors, and universities. And while you can see the connections, you need to understand the speed that we're talking about. You know, most of us now have anywhere from 100 megabit per second up to even 1 gigabit per second internet at our house. Back in 1980, when the ARPANET was set up, we were connecting at 300 bits per second. So what you have at home is hundreds of thousands of times faster than the origin of the internet back when it was ARPANET. So this was the predecessor of the internet. And what you see there is literally everybody who was on the internet in 1980. And the systems that were being connected were things like these mainframes. This is an IBM 3090-300 that ran at the equivalent of 200 megahertz. It had 500 megabytes of RAM, and you could put up to 50 gigabytes of disk with it, but that would have been an entire room full of 100 disk packs, each one the size of a washing machine. So imagine comparing that to the phones we're all running around with. Most of our phones have, if you've got the top of the line phone, it's got 8 cores. Each one of those cores is running at least 1.5 gigahertz. Most of our phones have around 8 gigabytes of RAM, and then they also have expansion of usually 128 or 256 gigabytes. And you can go out and right now buy an expansion card for your phone, a micro SD that will hold 1 terabyte and is the size of your thumbnail. So imagine you can buy the equivalent of 200 rooms full of disk packs for about 500 dirhams, and it's the size of your thumbnail. Just an idea of how far we've come. And this 3090 is exactly the kind of computer that I was working on when I started in the IT industry back in 1985. Now, if you wanted to contact someone on the ARPANET, you didn't know their email address because that didn't even exist. What you had to know was their bang path. You see, in IT, the exclamation symbol is called a bang, and it was used to separate the data in the person's network access or network address. So if you look on this person's business card, on Michael's card, you can see at the bottom his bang path. So it starts off by telling you what protocol to use to contact him, because different computers were running different protocols. So he was running Unix UUCP. So now I know which protocol. And then it's got the ARPANET node that the person was connected to. So the University of Washington Beaverton, abbreviated UW-Beaver, was a member of the ARPANET. Now, the bang says which will connect to, and in this case, it's Teltone. Teltone was not on the ARPANET, but they were connected through another type of network connection to the University of Washington in Beaverton. And then another bang, which is connected to, in this case, his company, Data.io. So Data.io was 2 steps away from the ARPANET, and then another bang, and then his ID, Holly. So if you wanted to contact somebody, you literally had to have memorized or have some listing of every node that you had to connect to get to that person. There was no such thing as automated routing. You had to be able to know what these connections were. And not all of these connections were 24 hours. The University of Washington Beaverton may have had their system up 24 hours, but Teltone may have only been up during working hours. And Data.io almost certainly was only up during normal working hours. So if you sent something to someone, it could take a long time to get there. Then in 1971, Ray Tomlinson sent the world's first email, and this is recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records. And interestingly, the first email was just QWERTY, the letters at the top of the keyboard, because he didn't actually think it was going to work. Ray is the person who's responsible for using the ampersand symbol or the @ sign to separate the username from their network domain, just like all emails do now. So that added one twist to how we used to contact people. Instead of a bang for the last connection, we would use an ampersand. But using bang paths was very inefficient and it just couldn't scale. A new type of addressing was needed. So Vint Cerf invented TCP/IP, Transmission Control Protocol / Internet Protocol, in 1973 with Robert Kahn, and Vint Cerf became known as the father of the internet. Sorry, Al Gore, you didn't invent the internet. It was actually Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn. The system of IP addresses and the domain names that we use today were invented by Vint and Bob. So from 1973 till 2021, and probably for as long as there are humans, we'll be using the system that they set up. Now, in 1973, the internet was primarily connections between government, big business, and universities, and it was entirely text-based, and it was accessed on the command line of computer terminals. Remember, at that point, PCs did not exist. Now, in 1981, the first real PC, the IBM PC, was released, and it's shown here with a Hayes modem. That's the little thing with the lights on it underneath the telephone with the dial on top. That Hayes modem could connect to the internet at 300 bits per second. Now, let me give you an idea of how slow that is. At that speed, if you could keep the connection up, it would take 45 hours to download one 3-minute MP3. Aren't you glad we've sped up since then? Also notice that the data from the internet shown on the PC is just text, because in 1981, that's all there was. We had a text screen that was 80 letters wide and 24 rows or 24 lines long, and you had to do everything in that 80 by 24 screen. Then in 1989, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who works at CERN on the Large Hadron Collider, invented the World Wide Web, HTML, the hypertext markup language that websites are created in, and the first internet browser called Mosaic. although most people couldn't use it because at that time, very, very few systems had a graphical user interface. The graphical user interface was actually developed by the Xerox company at the Xerox PARC Research Center and was then co-opted by a number of Unix systems. It was co-opted by Apple and, of course, by Windows. Microsoft Windows version 3.1 was the first graphical user interface widely used by the public. And it wasn't released until 1992. So there's a long time between when the internet started and when people had a graphical user interface and could start thinking about using a web browser to connect to the internet. The internet really took off in the early 2000s as computers became more common and more powerful. And importantly, the computers had built-in modems so that you didn't have to have an external modem connected underneath your phone, or in some cases, external modems where you actually had to take the handset and put it into an acoustic coupler and let it work that way. And of course, Windows 2000 had networking built into it. Before Windows 2000, you actually had to download and install special networking software, and it had Internet Explorer included. This was the internet for many, many years until something amazing happened. Excuse me. Steve Jobs announced the iPhone in 2007, and suddenly people everywhere had a practical way to take the internet anywhere they went. It was slow, it was low resolution, but it was amazing. You know, if you look at the specs, imagine trying to work on a 320 by 480 pixel screen. Now we have ultra high definition on our phones. It was really, really low definition, but it was amazing because nothing had ever existed like that. And the iPhone was connecting at speeds of about 14,400 bits per second. It would still have taken hours to download an MP3, but you could start to download web pages and things like that. It soon had a ton of competitors, and smartphones led to tablet computers, smart TVs, smart watches, and even devices like the Amazon Echo and Alexa. Now, nearly everything can be hooked to the internet, including cars, cameras, game consoles, printers, thermometers, speakers, cookers, refrigerators, security systems, and even things like light bulbs and electrical outlets. This is what we call the Internet of Things. It's no longer an internet of mainframes. It's no longer an internet of personal computers or an internet of smartphones. It's now an internet where nearly any electronic device can be hooked up. But it goes even beyond that to devices that are used for medical treatments and important infrastructure like water purification. IoT can provide a lot of benefits in terms of convenience, such as controlling your home appliances from your computer or smartphone, monitoring your home remotely from your smartphone when you're on vacation or at school, automating your home with Alexa or similar devices, and using navigation apps on your phone and having them mirrored on the screen in your car. And for companies, being able to monitor the locations of their employees and their equipment, being able to monitor the work of remote equipment like wind turbines to make sure that they're functioning properly, monitoring the status of patients in a hospital without having to constantly go into their room, and of course, being able to take electronic payments anywhere in the world. But for all of the benefits that IoT brings, there are also some problems. Many IoT devices like Alexa or your smartphone with Siri and OK Google are constantly listening to everything you say to identify if you're saying a keyword that is supposed to make them take action. Some of the audio, we have now found out, is sent back to these companies' headquarters for both human and machine training. There was a man who was talking to his wife at one point, and he was whispering to her, and he said, you know, Mark Zuckerberg is listening to us. And Alexa laughed, and Siri laughed, and Google laughed. Everything you say in the presence of your smartphone, everything you say in the presence of many types of IoT devices like the Amazon Echo can be picked up, it's analyzed, it may even be listened to by other people. And that's a concern. And unfortunately, most makers of IoT devices are not companies that are cybersecurity experts, and they're not willing to spend the money to make these devices secure. So there are constantly, and I really mean constantly, like every single week, new vulnerabilities being found in IoT devices that can allow them to access your data, break into your network, install ransomware on your system, record what you say, or even use cameras on the devices to record what you're doing. Even worse, most IoT devices are not set up so that they can be remotely updated. And even if they can, it often takes months between a bug being found and a fix being rolled out. As an example, recently people lost everything that they had on their media or backup drive when hackers were able to get into Western Digital hard drives that were hooked up to people's Wi-Fi routers and wipe out all of the data. At the same time, they could have been worse. They could have taken all of the data off of there, looked for anything that had bank account information or anything that people might not have wanted to be released publicly, and they could have used it for extortion and demanding that people pay to prevent their data from being released publicly. Home IoT devices have also been turned into a weapon in another way. In October 2016, a botnet of Internet of Things devices was used to attack the domain name service provider DYN, which serves the United States and in particular the East Coast of the US. The attack was the largest ever seen to that point at 1,000 gigabits per second. And it was a distributed denial of service attack. So all of these IoT devices were sending requests to these DNS server providers and just overloaded their system. And you can see by the heat map where all of these requests were going. It knocked out internet service for most of the East Coast and some of the West Coast for almost an entire day. And again, some devices in your home might have been used in this attack without you ever even knowing it. And think about it, how would you feel if you couldn't access the internet all day or maybe for several days? You know, what if the next attack from IoT devices is against the UAE and millions of devices all over the world overload the internet connections to the UAE, and we just can't use the internet. I don't think any of us would like that. But it can even be worse and actually threaten the lives and health of people. Just a few months ago, industrial Internet of Things systems were attacked, and a chemical that is useful in small amounts but can cause severe burns or even death in larger amounts was put into the water system in amounts sufficient to harm people by hackers who got in through an IoT system. So while IoT can offer a lot of convenience and capabilities, it can also present huge risks that are not presently being addressed. So your task in this year's DEWA Business Cup Challenge is to develop solutions to business cases by using existing IoT devices, maybe in new ways or combinations, or by inventing new IoT devices. So the DEWA 2021 Business Cup Challenge will start today on October 15th with this first session. So 3 weeks starting from today, there'll be a new case released on Thursdays, and the solution to each one of those cases is then due the following Thursday. And myself and a team of judges will review the cases in detail and will provide feedback by the end of day on the following Sunday. Now, your case solution cannot be more than 2,000 words plus up to 2 pages of charts, graphs, and pictures, assuming that you're sending it in either a Word document or a PowerPoint presentation. 2,000 word limit, plus you can add in up to 2 pages of charts and graphs and pictures. It can be in any format you want. It can be PowerPoint, Prezi, can be a document, a spreadsheet. You can even do it as an audio or video file, although those are limited to not more than 5 minutes. So for audio and video, it's not a word limit, but rather a time limit. The idea that you propose has to be related to the business, and it must be something that is possible. And when I say possible, it has to be both technically possible and it has to be possible in terms of being realistic. So let's say that your idea involved distributing a completely new kind of IoT device to every person in China. That's not possible. You're not going to be able to build and distribute 1.4 billion IoT devices and get them to everybody in China. It's just impractical in terms of logistics, in terms of cost, things like that. So you need to really consider, is this possible, both with what technology is available today and in terms of actually getting things to people. Physical devices getting to people is going to be a real challenge unless you're talking about very small numbers. You do not need to go into technical details. I don't need to know what protocol you're planning on using or things like that. What I need to know is, what does your IoT device do, or what does your IoT related service do? So understand, you do not have to create a new device. Your solution might involve taking one or more existing IoT devices and adding features or using them in different ways or different combinations. So it's not a matter of saying, can you come up with the new latest, greatest IoT device? You can use what's there, just use it creatively. In your solution, you need to show how the business will make money, which means you have to have a financial plan, and the financial plan has to include a reasonable estimate of what the costs are going to be, and a reasonable estimate of what the revenues would be, and a break-even point. Now, with your solution, it may be that the solution generates new revenue for a business, or it may be that the solution saves the business cost, and that's how it pays for itself, or it could be a combination of those two things. But in any case, your financial plan needs to go far enough out to show the point where the revenue or savings exceeds the cost, where the break even is. And then you need to consider the political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal impacts that would affect your solution. This is called a pestle analysis. And there's some great resources on the internet you can look at to see how to do a pestle analysis. But in essence, for each of these 6 areas, you need to think, how does this area constrain or limit what we can do? And how does this area act as a driver or something that pushes us to doing a particular thing? So for example, there may be certain legal impacts. For example, it may not be legal to connect or to collect certain types of personally identifiable information without the user giving consent. So that would be a constraint that you would have to deal with. On the other hand, there may be some things that are driving this to be done. So for example, we are just coming to the end of a global pandemic, and maybe one of the drivers is a way to enable business to be done without having to have people face to face with each other to reduce the risk of spreading disease. So that could be an environmental concern that drives us to this solution. So in your response, I expect to see headings that say, political, economic, social, technological, environmental, legal. And within each of those, anything that constrains or limits what you can do with your solution, and anything that acts as a driver or motivator for that solution. Your solution also needs to consider any existing competitors and any future competitors. If you're going into, for example, a delivery business, well, you would have to consider Careem and Talabat and Fetcher and things like that as existing competitors. In other areas, you might need to think about maybe Amazon. For example, Amazon.ae is now offering grocery delivery, which makes them a competitor to Carrefour and Spinneys and Choithrams. They're also now offering house cleaning services. Imagine the people who've been working in house cleaning in the UAE for years. They probably would have never thought that Amazon would be one of their competitors. But how hard was it to enter that business? It wasn't. Amazon makes some contracts with a few house cleaning companies and starts offering the service through their website. And because people are used to using Amazon and it makes things easy, Amazon has now entered that business. They're taking a piece of the profit and now competing and possibly making it impossible for any other house cleaning service to stay viable. So you need to think, who might my future competitors be? And included in that, if you're talking Internet of Things, you better be thinking about Google, Apple, and Amazon, and possibly even Microsoft, because they can easily move into any type of business that happens to be connected to the internet and deals with consumers. So that's the kind of thing that we need to see in your solution. So each week, the top 5 team, well, we'll have a leaderboard and you'll see who's in the top 5. At the end of week 3, the top 5 teams on the leaderboard go directly to the finals. It's like being on Britain's Got Talent and you just got the golden buzzer. You go straight through to the finals. Then in week 4, everyone will get the final case. And this is the case that would be presented at the finals. All of the teams that are not in the top 5 also get an elevator pitch case. Now you might be asking, what's an elevator pitch? The way to think of an elevator pitch is imagine that you're at the Burj Khalifa. You're on the elevator. There's no one else on there. Just before the door closes, Elon Musk steps onto the elevator. The door closes. You and Elon are alone in the elevator all the way to the top of the Burj Khalifa. You've got a little bit of time. How do you share with Elon your business idea? Not to the detail that he would say, yes, I'll invest in that, because that's going to take a lot of presentation. But how do you share enough of your idea that he says, this sounds like an interesting idea. I want you to come to my office and actually give me a full presentation on it. That's what an elevator pitch is. So all of the teams who are not in the top 5 will get to present their elevator pitch at the semifinals on the 13th of November with a strict 40-second time limit. Anything you say in second 41 or beyond doesn't count. So you've got to practice and practice and practice to make sure you get your timing down right. The best 5 pitches will go on to the finals on November 20th to join the top 5 teams who were on the leaderboard. For the final case, you can present it any way that you like. You can do a PowerPoint presentation. You can just do a stand up and talk. You can do an interpretive dance. Whatever you want to do within a strict 10-minute time limit. And again, anything beyond that 10 minutes doesn't count. So you've got to present all of the same type of information that you would have presented for the prior cases in 10 minutes in any format that you like. And this can include, if you just want to make a video and play the video, something like that. Absolutely. One of our previous top finalists in the Business Cup Challenge actually used the technique of RS Animate and presented their entire case that way. And it was phenomenal. In fact, it was so good that our company hired them to do some marketing work for us. The judges will then determine first, second, and third places. And there will be prizes for the top 3 finishers and their teachers or counselors. So that's the overview of IoT and the BCC. And we can go and look at the questions. And okay. So the question, where can we get the case study? So the case study will be sent to the email address that you registered from, and you'll receive it every Thursday, and then you'll send the response back every Thursday following. Should case study answers, not the final one, be submitted in Word documents? It can be Word, it can be PowerPoint, it could be Prezi, it could be a video, it could be an audio file. Any format is fine. If it's Word, PowerPoint, Prezi, again, limited to not more than 2,000 words and limited to not more than 2 pages of charts, graphs, things like that. If you submit it as an audio file or a video file, you're limited to 5 minutes, but the format's up to you. How many groups are there currently in total? I think there's probably 200 or so. Figure 200 to 250 groups probably involved in about 1,000 participants. Can we have an idea what the prizes would be? Well, part of it is a surprise, but I can tell you that there will be medals, there will be trophies, there will be certificates of participation, there will be internships, including for the winners, a paid internship with DEWA, and other prizes as the sponsors want to present. Will we get an email of all the rules you spoke about right now? So the rules are on the website, and we'll make sure to get an email out to everyone with those rules as we send out the case. Can we get this presentation sent to us? Yes, I'm happy to put it into a PDF and have that sent out. I'll make sure that gets done. Where can we submit the case study answer? So in the email that comes out to you with the case study, it will have the email address that you'll send the response to. So where do we have to submit it? Just answer that. Which email? It will be in the email that comes out to you. Is there any way that we can gain access to this PowerPoint? Yes, we'll send that PowerPoint out to everyone. Should all the members in the team send in their case study individually? No. One person sends in the case study for the entire team. So we only get one submission per team. How many people should there be in a team? Ideally, it's 4 or 5. If you only have 3, that's okay. We can still make that work. It just puts extra work on the team members. And if one of your team members for some reason has to drop out, don't worry, you won't get kicked out of the competition, even if everybody dropped out and it was just one person. It just means that's a lot more work on that one person. So the submissions, 1 submission for the entire team. Yes, we are sharing this PowerPoint. The competition this year, yes, due to the regulations that are still in place from KHDA and the Dubai Health Authority, we will be conducting this still online. Next year, inshallah, we'll be able to go back to having a fully face-to-face semifinals and finals. But every year, of course, the first 3 rounds are handled through email. Can we get help from the teachers? The teachers should point you in the right direction, but just like your work at school, you have to do it on your own. The teachers can just act as guides to make sure that you're pointed in the right direction. You submit your work through the email that will be sent out with the case study. Okay. The recording of this session will be made available. So if you were not able to, or someone from your team wasn't able to attend, or you want to watch it again, you'll be able to do that. So let's see, that's, okay, we talked about just one case study for the whole group. What are the criteria the judges look for? So it's all of the things that I had listed off. So we're looking for something that's directly related to the business. We're looking for something that will be able to either make money for the business, make a profit, or save money so that its costs are covered. We're looking for something that has all of its finances laid out, cost and revenues. We're also looking for something that has the PESTLE criteria laid out. So we expect to see political, environmental, technological, social, legal, everything laid out. And then we're also looking for you to have information about the competition and what the likely competition would be. So there are 4 case studies in total, 3 that are done during the first 3 weeks, plus the final case study. And then there is also a separate case study just for the elevator pitch for all of the teams that are not in the top 5 when we finish week 3. This is open to university students, but they're not competing with the secondary school students. They have their own competition, and we'll be looking at their case studies separately. Should we write team names in the presentation? Yes, on the cover of the Word document or the first slide of the PowerPoint, please have your team name and the names of each of your team members. Does it have to be the same person sending the answers every time? No, the team can nominate anybody from the team to send in the team's answer. You've got a team of 7. Yeah, if you were able to sign up that way, then that's allowed. The recording of this session will be made available. Maximum number of participants in a group. I thought it was 5. Apparently it's 7. So it looks like we can have a team up to 7. Repeat the topic again. So the topic of the whole competition is Internet of Things. The topic for each week will be given in the case study. So it will be something tied into the Internet of Things for a particular business or for a particular sector of industry. So when you read the case study, you'll have all the information you need. I registered individually with a mentor. Should I form a team? If you can, I would encourage it, because none of us is as smart as all of us. So you'll get good ideas from having a team. But if you are already registered just as an individual and want to compete that way, that's fine. Every team member will get the case study emailed individually. This is why we ended up asking for every team member's address. That way we're able to make sure that no matter what happens, we can at least get hold of one or a couple of members of the team. Okay, in each case study we are given, must be answered with the subheadings of PESTLE. Yet not the whole case study. There'll be other subsections like what the idea is, the finances, but then there'll be a section on PESTLE, and you'll need to have each of those areas addressed. Maximum members on a team, I believe it's 7 based on what I'm hearing. How often will we meet up like this throughout the competition? After this session that we're having now, the next time that we meet up in any form of live session will be at the semifinals. Between now and then, if you have any questions, just send it to the BCC email address and the team there will answer the questions for you. The recording, again, will be going out. Can you change your team name later? You can. Just make sure that you have informed the BCC team so that they can update the records and you don't lose connectivity with the points you earned earlier on. Yes, the university student competition is separate from the high school students. The recording, you'll be sent a link so that you'll be able to go and watch the recording. Does the presentation matter equally as well as the idea we brought up, like the way we make the PowerPoint? No. We're not looking at how fancy your PowerPoint is or how technologically advanced it is. All we're looking at is the idea and the financials and the PESTLE. So that's why just submitting it on a Word document is probably the easiest way to do it. because it does not need to be fancy at all. The only time that you might want to get a little bit fancy is in the finals, just because you're presenting it live, and it's nicer to have something like that. But even then, it doesn't impact the way the judges will score. Okay, so for university students, yes, you'll form a team and then you'll compete as a team. We already talked about where you'll get the recording. You'll get 3 case studies, 1 each week, and then the final case study for week 4. The dates were in the slides, and these slides will be made available. The dates are also on the Curtin Dubai BCC website, and they're mentioned in this video. So you'll have multiple ways to get them, but essentially the first case will go out this weekend, and then you'll get a case every Thursday after that. If there are 11 members in a team, you really need to divide that into 2 teams, because that's getting too big to be practical. Everyone is invited to the finals to observe. The top 10 teams will be actually participating in the finals. So if you want to participate in the finals, make sure that you're in the top 10. Again, the recording will be sent out as a link. Okay, previous competition recordings and resources. If you'd like to see some videos from the previous competition, you can send a note to the BCC at Curtin Dubai email, and when you do that, you will get a link sent back to you with recordings from previous BCCs. How many case studies? Again, it's 3 case studies with one final one given at the end. So 1 every week for the next 3 weeks. We'll determine who the top 5 are, and then we'll send out the case study for the final plus the case study for the elevator pitch. Is this meeting for university students? No, this one is for, was ideally intended for secondary school students. The one for university students starts at 12 o'clock today. We already said we'll be sending out the recording in the PowerPoint. Team of 8. 8's kind of pushing it. I would recommend actually splitting into 2 teams. It also gives your school a better chance of getting into the final. Will any part of this be face-to-face? Unfortunately, with the current requirements, we were not able to do that. So we have to remain online for this year. Next year, we'll be back to face-to-face, inshallah. Does the case study come out tomorrow or next week? The case study will be coming out tomorrow after everybody has had a chance to view the presentation that was made today, and then it will be due next Thursday. But then the case studies will be every Thursday after that. You submit the case study once for the entire group. Are there any plans for high school students? We've got 2 separate competitions. So if you haven't gotten this, there's one competition that is for secondary school students. That's what this presentation is about right now. There is a side competition for university students. The presentation about that is at 12 o'clock today. The university students are doing essentially the same thing, except they only have 1 case and then the finals, where high school students get 3 cases and then the finals. Will judges ask questions while you're presenting regarding our presentation? No. What you present is what you present. There will not be any questions from the judges. Will I be judging? Yes, I'll be one of the judges on the panel. I've been a judge in every one of the BCCs since I started it back in 2011. The email address. So Ms. Everill, if you could please put the BCC email address into the chat box so that everyone has
It's already been done. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. How many points can a team get from a case study? So we're marking out of 100 points. So if it was absolutely a perfect case study, it could get 100. On the other end, if it is plagiarized, and we do run all of the presentations through, or all of the answers through Turnitin. If it is plagiarized, if there's copy and paste in it, it gets an automatic 0. So make sure that all of the work is your own work and that it's written in your own words. Do not copy and paste anything from the internet. Okay, the email is in the chat. If you want to see the old videos, you'll submit the case study to the email that's been provided. What time is the case study released? We usually release it in the early afternoon. Although for this first week, the case study is going to be released tomorrow, and it will come to you in your email. So the deadline for this first case study is next Thursday. So by end of day on Thursday, and that leaves us then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to do the marking. All team members will receive the same case study, and the entire competition runs from now until just at the end of November. Can you add charts and graphs from the internet, or will that count as plagiarism? You are allowed to copy a chart or a graph from the internet. You don't have to recreate it yourself, but underneath it, you need to put where you got it so that it's clear that this is not to be considered your own work, that this is just showing an illustration. But the text has to be your own work. No copy and paste for the text. The leaderboard will be available to view. It will be on the BCC website at the Curtin Dubai website. How will you know if you're selected? It will be on the leaderboard, and you'll also be notified by email if you're in the top 5. And with the elevator pitches, the top 5 will be told right then, and of course will also receive email. The second case study will be released the same day as you submit the first one. Yes. So you submit on Thursday, you get the new case study on Thursday. And this first week case study will be due next Thursday. How much time should you devote to it? That's entirely up to you. You know, you should spend as much time on it as you need to get the kind of answer that you feel proud of and you want to submit. Whether that's an hour or that's 5 hours is entirely up to your team. What plagiarism percentage is allowed? So officially, we don't take plagiarism. We look at it in context. So for example, certain words or phrases are always going to come up. Let's say that you were referring to His Highness in your presentation. So you have His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President and Prime Minister of the UAE and ruler of Dubai. That, of course, is going to show up because His Highness's name and titles are used everywhere. We don't count that. What we're looking for is if we're seeing whole sentences or several sentences, that's a problem. So just like when you're doing academic work at school, there should be no plagiarism except for that incidental. Similarly, if you put in a reference list, those references, if you reference them correctly, will show up as plagiarized, but that doesn't count because that's just the reference of where you got the material. So basically, just think of it this way. What you type needs to be all your own words. If you follow that rule, you won't have any problem. Okay, the case studies are released on Thursday in the afternoon. They're due the next Thursday by close of day. You get the case study regardless of whether you sent the previous one. We release it to everybody at the same time. The first case study will be released tomorrow, and then all of the subsequent case studies will be released on the Thursdays. There's no presentation for the first 3 case studies. You simply send in the answer in whatever format you chose to. The first time that we actually have a live presentation of case studies is the semifinals presenting the elevator pitch, and then the finals presenting case study 4. So you can submit the case study anytime on Thursdays. And yes, so the first case study, the one that comes out tomorrow, will be due back in on the 21st of October, which is next Thursday. Can we get previous solutions? Yeah, unfortunately, we can't release the previous solutions other than what you can see in the videos of the previous finals. You've been given all of the things that need to be included, so it's then up to you to work out your solution. If we cite our quotations correctly, there'll be no issue with plagiarism. With quotations, if you need to use a quote, there should not be more than maybe 1 or 2 sentences in your entire presentation that are quotes, and then yes, quotation marks and a citation. So if you don't make it to the finals, you're still welcome to attend the finals and see how the teams presented, and then of course try again next year with all of the knowledge that you've gained from this year. The points released for the case study, that will be released on Sundays. By close of the day Sunday, we'll put up the leaderboard so you can see how many points your team got. Can you submit before Thursday? Absolutely. You can submit as soon as you are done working on it. Do we have to provide where we got the information even though we paraphrased it? No, we're not being rigorous about that. So if you have sourced information from a website, you don't have to put the reference. This isn't an academic paper in that sense. So you can use the information, just make sure it's entirely in your own words. And will we be able to get internships if we don't make it to the finals? If you are interested in an internship, please just email the BCC email address and let them know. We have internship programs constantly running all year long with various companies. So if you are interested in an internship, we'll be happy to help try and facilitate that. There will be certificates of participation for everybody who participates, whether they make it to the finals or not. And what needs to be done next week, you'll get the case study tomorrow. By next week, you need to have developed your answer to the case study, including all of the different things that were mentioned. What if it's sent at 11:59, but the internet doesn't work well? We're not being really, ridiculously strict. If it comes in at 12:02, it's fine. But if it comes in on on Friday, that's different. That's late. Is the internship for 18 years and above? Actually, with the new change in the law by the UAE government, we can do internships down to 16 years old. So as long as you're 16, we can work out an internship. What will the winning teams get? As I said, there's going to be trophies, medals, certificates, internships, and other prizes as determined by the sponsor. Yeah, the internship laws for 15 plus, Not all of the companies we work with will go as low as 15, but if you are 15 and want an internship, go ahead and let us know. We may be able to find one within TAG. We do take interns as young as 15 based on the law. Our points cut if the case study is submitted late. So if the case study comes in late, we may deduct up to 10 points for that. If it's really late, it may not get marked at all. So if we get a case study, say on Saturday, it likely will not get marked. If you're 14 and want an internship, we would have to work that out with your parents and your school. Again, let us know, and we're happy to talk to your school. The rules get a little different because it then has to be considered part of something you're doing for school. There is a way to do it, but it's a little trickier. If you miss out the first case study, will you be disqualified? No, no one gets disqualified. It's just you probably won't make it to the top 5 on the leaderboard, which means you'll have to do really, really good in the elevator pitch to make sure you're in the top 5 of the elevator pitch. How many participants? Probably 200 teams and about 1,000 people. Are there online internships? Yes, a lot of the internships are being done online right now due to the pandemic. Is registration still open for additional members? Yes, if you've got an additional member for your team, we can still squeeze that in. The first case study has not yet gone out. 16-year-old internships. From 16 and older, the UAE now allows, well, actually 15 and older, the UAE now allows internships, paid or unpaid. So we have companies that we work with who are looking for interns and are willing to take people as young as 16. And as I said, within TAG and Curtin Dubai, will even go as young as 15 for certain types of work. Okay, and for internship requests, please email to the BCC address. And again, for 14-year-olds, go ahead and email us. It's just we have to work it out a little differently because it has to be tied into something that your school is doing to comply with the law. Okay, I think this is good. Let me turn it back over to Ms. Everill.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dan. It was a pleasure to have you speak with our students for today, and thank you all for attending. We look forward to an exciting competition ahead. Thank you and have a good weekend. The email to the competition, in case you have any last-minute questions, I will post the email ID in the chat box once again. Thank you.